Hello. Hello, hello. Happy Tuesday to you. It's good to see you all. It's good to be here. It's good to be able to talk after a major convention. My voice might sound a little off. That's because I was at PAX Unplugged all last weekend selling games. Um, and I forgot my microphone, which is the thing that I normally use to save my voice. So I'm a little hoarse, but I could be certainly a lot worse. So this is a recap stream. I like doing these just to give people a sense of, what is it like to do the whole like boothing thing? What's that like? And how was PAX? What did I do at PAX? All that good stuff. So, this is mostly if you're just interested in like Gila RPG's perspective on PAX. I don't anticipate this will be super long, but I always have to preface streams these days with, I do this while my baby is napping. And so if she wakes up, then we'll do this as a two-parter, but I think we can get this all done in one go. So how was PAX? Long story short, it was awesome. It's always awesome. PAX is easily my favorite con, both as a vendor and as just somebody being there. I like to kind of think about it as like a Goldilocks con. It's not too small, it's not too big. It's the last con that I attend every year, and it's in such stark contrast to the other two that I attended, Gen Con and Gamehole Con. Now, Gen Con, I've been doing that one for a few years too. This is my fourth year with PAX. Gen Con, I've done 3 years, I think. And Gamehole, it was the first time. Gen Con is so crowded. It's unbelievably crowded. And Gamehole Con is not crowded. There is nobody there. So this is a nice in between. It never feels like it's impossible to go like wander the halls and go see people. It's just like a really good time. So I love this con. And it also happens to like have take place during hi purple and silver. Um, happens to take place around the holiday season, which means the like the Christmas market gets set up in downtown Philly, and we always walk past it on our way to the hotel. So that's just an added delightful thing. So yes, I love PAX. PAX is fantastic. So what was PAX like as a vendor this year, and just the Gila experience at PAX? Well, it started off a little chaotic, but ultimately in a good way. So, about 2 weeks before the con, I was moved. A whole bunch of booths were moved, and I was moved, and I was happy to be moved because I was really far away from like all the other RPG people. I was kind of like thrown off into a corner, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of a bummer. I've been doing this for a little while," and so they moved me, and it turns out when they moved me, I was moving from my standard 10 by 10, 10 foot by 10 foot booth to a 10 by 20. And they upgraded me for free, which is really, really nice of them to do. So they didn't say, like, hey, okay, great, give us 1,200 more dollars. They just upgraded, doubled the size of my booth. But the silver lining to this upgrade is that the upgrade took place 2 weeks before the convention. So now, my very good friend Mike and I, who you've probably seen Mike if you've been to any of the Gila booths before, Mike's also the layout and graphic designer for so many of my games, most recently Dragon Slayers. Mike and I are like, oh shit, we need to fill double the space. We need to somehow make this work. And we talked about it ahead of time. We had a general sense of a blueprint. We had to buy more tables. I had to buy a roof rack for my car in order to carry it all because we drive from Chicago. Um, so that was kind of a panicky situation, but it was ultimately fantastic because the size was great, but the location was even better. I was literally like kitty corner or diagonal away from my very good friend Adam Vass of World Champ Game Co. I was one row over from Will Yobst of Good Luck Press. Tyler Kremrine's the other direction. Plus one EXP's over there. It's like we're all really close together, which is ideal because many times throughout the convention, somebody is asking for a particular thing that I don't sell, like horror, for example, and I can go, great, just go over to Adam or Will, and they've got you covered. So the upgrade was great for the size. We had to figure it out, but we figured it out. But it was really great for the location. In terms of getting there, we drive there from Chicago every year, which is a long drive. Although this year it was easier than any year previous because game design is now my full-time job. We could leave earlier in the day. We used to have to leave at the end of the day on Wednesday because I would teach classes, but I'm not teaching classes anymore. So we had to leave like around like 1:30 Chicago time, drove straight to Pittsburgh, spent the night there, drove the rest of the way, and there was no line when we got to the Philly Convention Center, so we got to drive our car right up onto the hall. If you're not familiar, that's how setup at PAX works, is you drive your car out onto the convention floor and drop off all your stuff, and then you got to go move your car. It's really awesome. It's super, super nice that they let you do that. There's always the possibility that it doesn't happen because of like weather and stuff, but they let us do it, and it was really great being able to do that, especially with no line. Our booth was also right near the entrance, so it wasn't a hard drive. Setting up, though, was a puzzle, I'll tell you that much, because we came in with a game plan for how to fill the 10 by 20 space, and after we set up our initial blueprint, we realized it was not what we wanted. There were still too many like open spaces and unused space and everything like that. And so we eventually, it took us a while. It took us about like 5.5 hours when normally setup is usually like an hour and a half, maybe two for us. So more than double the time for double the space, but we eventually figured it out. And if you saw pictures on Blue Sky or Instagram, I'm really, really happy with the setup of the booth. I probably should have pulled up like a photo of it. But it looked really, really good. The banners, the giant banner in the background was great, drew a lot of eyes. The colored pennants you might have noticed on the tables, we use those. I should just get a picture of this, otherwise this is not going to make any sense to anybody ever. let me let me do that real quick, just so that if you were not there, you're not trying to imagine this space. Let me actually just put it in front of your eyes. Let's do that. What do you say? There you go. Now you can see it. That was what our booth looked like. Um, so big banner in the background. The colored pennants here then, like, ignore the fact that this is not ironed. We have to drive for 14 hours from Chicago. um, we'll get like the fit tablecloths in the future. The pennants we would use as like a pointer to go to certain areas. You can't see it, but there's a blue pennant behind here that would be like, go to the blue section if you're looking for Slayers. Go to the red section if you're looking for Nova and Lumen games, etc. So it was just one more like visual tag that we could use during setup, and guiding people when they were at the booth. And I think it was successful. For the most part, people would be walking around from this angle and looking into the booth, which is where they would look through this door and see Rune. And we had a setup of like combats for Rune. So we had some like grids and cards and tokens out, and that drew people in. People get drawn into Rune anyways because the cover that Eddie did is fantastic. But they'll look at the description, they'll see Solo Souls like, and they'll want to know more. This was even more powerful. People would see a little grid with these little figures and cards set up, and right next to that would be a book that looks awesome and says Solo Souls like, and people want to know more about it. So that was a really big draw. And then we put Dragon Slayers on the end over here for both of these angles as people came from that side. And basically, Mike and I split the booth. Mike was just doing Rune explanations the whole time, and then I was largely covering Slayers, which was the other big popular thing, and then the Lumen stuff that you can't see on the other side of these cubes. So yeah, that was a big takeaway, was having a demo set up that nobody even ran the demo, but it was just having it set up so that people could see and we could walk them through. And we had the little pamphlet realms out too. It was so helpful to be like, you walk around on these kind of maps and then you jump into this combat and you can see the cards that you would be rolling on and it will tell you what the enemies do. It was just a lot easier than trying to explain it in a way that somebody had to like calculate it in their head, right? I also really like this thing that we did here on this back wall. This is just our inventory wall. So rather than having inventory for every game, because if we did that, there'd be a second shelf here and it would block a lot of the banner. We put most of the fresh inventory back here. So people would want to pick something up, they'd go they put the table copy down, go pick up a fresh copy of whatever they were buying over here, and then check out in the middle. Last thing I'll say about sort of setup here is actually two more things. One is this, you'll see there's a huge open space here in the middle, and that was really, really nice actually. Had tons of friends and other people coming by, which we'll talk about meeting people in a little bit. And that was great. And having a spot in the booth where people could sit and like talk to us without blocking the books was really, really valuable. So while this might look like a large unused zone, it was actually, there were people there all the time. It's also where we checked people out when they were ready to buy things. So really happy with the setup. I guess the other thing about setup I'll save for later when we talk about what's coming up or for next year. So that was getting there, setting up, super easy once we solved the puzzle. And all of our neighbors were super nice. We didn't have any issues with any like weird neighbors or, sometimes you get stuck next to a neighbor at these cons that is like running raffles or freebies all con, and so they're like there's always a line around their booth and that line blocks you, and so we didn't have to worry about any of that. The one thing that is very much lacking in our booth is ground support, like the soft stuff, and we simply didn't buy it because we have a 10 by 20 this year that we don't intend on using like this next year, so we didn't buy the cushy material. Also because we weren't sure if we were going to have enough room because we had to suddenly bring a lot more stuff. um, Seeing and meeting people is always fantastic at these cons. I got to see so many of my friends. I had just seen Will and Adam at Gamehole Con, so it was just great seeing the both of them again. Tyler Crumrine, Tony and Keegan and Sarah and Wes from the Plus One EXP crew are always wonderful. John and Bree from Brightbard, great to see them as well. I am almost certainly going to forget a bunch of people, friends of mine that I got to see. Cassie Mothwin and her husband, two just unbelievably delightful people. It was really nice coming and seeing people that I knew and then meeting new people as well. It's easily the most appreciated thing is when somebody comes up to the booth and says, "Hey, I'm a big fan of what you do. Thank you for making it." Or "I played this game and I enjoyed it." That's like the best thing in the world. I even had a few people come up and say, "Hey, I started designing games because of you or because of Lumen." So that was really cool too. That stuff fuels us. That stuff makes us feel like what we're doing matters. So that was really, really nice. In terms of other new people that I met, probably a big highlight for me was getting to meet Quinns of Quinn's Quest. We've interacted a few times on Blue Sky, and I had messaged him about stopping by, and he did, and it was really great getting a chance to chat with him and show him some games. Super nice. So that was cool. That was a fun moment for me. And finally getting to see Spencer Stark and Rowan from Darrington Press. Spencer Stark and I became internet friends back in 22, 21, whenever Slayers and Alice is Missing went up for Ennies. That we went up for Ennies the same year as one another. For the same categories like best rules, best game, product of the year, and everything. So we had a running joke of as long as a Spencer wins, we've both won. So being able to see Spencer Stark in person, give him a giant hug was really, really nice. So yeah, meeting and seeing people is always great. In terms of purchases, I did not buy any games. Like I mentioned at the start of the stream, I am in new dad mode, which means we're not acquiring a lot of stuff. I don't have space for stuff. And it also means I'm playing fewer games. So I don't tend to buy things at conventions anymore. I allowed myself two purchases. One was the latest Plus One EXP t shirt because Tony makes really high quality shirts that are super soft and they don't like fade and wear away. And Adam Vass did the design of it. So a bunch of my favorite people involved on that shirt. And then I also bought, I should have grabbed it, it's downstairs. I bought the StarCraft skirmish games. There's a StarCraft skirmish game that's coming out, like a StarCraft, like a minis game. And they had a promotional mini for Zeratul, who is a character in StarCraft, probably my favorite character in my favorite game. StarCraft is probably the most important, if not one of the most important games for me as a human being and as a designer as well. So I love skirmish games. So the fact that there's a StarCraft skirmish game coming out is very exciting. And the fact that they had a promo mini for my favorite character from the game, I had to buy that. So I bought a mini for a game that doesn't exist yet. And a t-shirt. That's what I bought at PAX. Um, and I'm happy. I'm happy with the purchases that I made. There were even some folks that are like, do you want to do like trades for books? I was like, I want to acquire no new books. I have no room on these shelves. That's all inventory or becoming mostly inventory. But I will take a StarCraft mini. That's that I'll do. Games. Did I play any games? No. I played one game. I played one game on the first after the first night, and that was it. And that is becoming increasingly the tradition for Mike and I at these conventions, um, especially now post dad mode where I'm just tired all the time. But like we would just be tired. Like we're on our feet all day at the booth for 8 hours straight, and then like you have to go eat dinner, and then by the time you've done all that, it's like 7:38, which might not sound late to some folks, but is late for me. And I just don't have the energy at that point to play any games. I used to in my younger days, but I just don't really anymore, which is, a shame because I really wanted to play games with friends and, just I was at the booth all day long and there's nothing really that can be done about that. Unless in the future I can get people to kind of run the booth for me for shifts and I can get away and play games. We played one game. We played a new Oink game that Adam Vass picked up, where you are piloting drones that are delivering Christmas presents. It's a weird dexterity game where you and a partner push on either side of this drone to lift it around a map. It was very silly, very goofy, and Oink games are the perfect games for conventions. They like don't require too much brain space. Once you learn the rules, they're simple, and then you can just play a couple of rounds and be done with it. And we did that, and then that was it. I was supposed to play some Dragon Slayers on the very last night on Sunday, and then it just didn't work out. And also, I was secretly happy about that because I was so tired. I was so tired. Because Sunday's a hard day too, because you work the full shift, and then you have to break down and move all your stuff out. Um, in terms of what sold, I won't talk specific numbers until the end. In terms of like money, because I know some folks don't like to talk about finances to the degree of openness that I do, and that's fine. But I'll just say in general, my takeaways in terms of like themes of things that were bought. Dragon Slayers and Rune were the two most popular games. It's not surprising at all. Rune is always my most popular game, unless I have a new release that can kind of challenge it for that convention. So Dragon Slayers was there. Um, Although I will say they sold. Dragon Slayers made more money. I won't say how much yet, but it made more money. But it sold a similar number as Rune, and that's because Dragon Slayers is $5 more expensive. So they were very similar in terms of how many I sold of each of those. The other couple other things that jumped out to me in terms of what sold. Uh, People bought Reap a lot, which was surprising because people don't buy Reap not at conventions. It's sort of the forgotten game. But once somebody is learning about the Souls like thing, the solo Souls like thing, and they're interested in that concept, and they could look over 6 inches and see Reap's cover, and they go, "Oh, that's the Necromancer version of it." They buy that. So Reap is popular at conventions when you have the ability to like really explain the solo souls like thing to people. And that was the game. Honestly, I had more people coming up and saying I played Reap than I played Rune. That's the first time that this has happened. So that was an interesting change in pattern. Um, Other things that jumped out, Hunt is still in the top. It's number 4 in terms of most sold thing. Hunt sells itself. It's really, really easy to sell Hunt. It's a one-shot game. It's doomed knights going into a cursed forest, hunting a beast. And you flip through and you look at some of the art that Galen did, and you look at like the major premise, and then yeah, people will buy that game. And Mike did such an incredible job with the cover that it just sells itself. The other thing, and sort of two related concepts that I will be bringing forward with me into next year, so this is a good segue, is, for 4 years, people have been asking me, do you have any duet games? And I would always say, no, I don't have any duet games. And I wanted to do something about that, but I didn't want to make a new game that was a duet game. I didn't want to make a whole new thing. So what I did this year is I released Rune Duet, which turns a solo game into a duet game, and Slayer's Duet, which turns a group game down to a duet game. I released these supplements. They're cheap on itch. And I did a print run, and basically nobody ever bought it until the convention. These things sold at the convention. And so this was, I was happy to see this because people had been saying, I would love you to do this. I would love for you to do this. And then when I did it, I got it to a convention, people did. We sold out of all the duet copies that we bought for both of those games, which was really cool. So people want duet stuff, and I know now to bring more next time, and just understanding that that's like a con selling thing. And that's sort of the other takeaway is there are some things that sell better at cons than they do online. For example, people will pick up copies of Time to Kill, Rigged, and Corvid Court at conventions because the first two are solo journaling games, and they'll come into the booth looking for solo things. They don't want the game experience of Rune or Reap, but they like the solo journaling thing. And once they get to hear the premise of Time to Kill or Rigged, they're into it. So there's some things that just sell at conventions, and the other sort of thing is supplements to games, because that kind of works two ways. One is people show up and they say, I bought Slayers last year, loved it. What more do you have for it? Or played Rune last year, really enjoyed it. Do you have more Rune stuff? So now I can point them to things. The other thing is somebody might be interested in starting one of these games, Rune or Slayers, and I can say, yeah, I have this duet on ramp for you if you want to play it with a partner, or I have these other supporting things. Here's a new Rune Realm or some pamphlets or the Slayer's Almanac and stuff like that. And people are more willing to go try out a new game, seeing a suite of supporting material that goes with it. Which brings us to next year. What am I going to do? This is not just a PAX next year thing, but also sort of a design philosophy for next year, which is I want to make a lot more supporting material for my games. I want to have my 4 flagship titles and then just have a lot of support for them. Going back up to this sort of thing, I want there to be a banner for Nova, a banner for Rune, a banner for Slayers, including Dragon Slayers, and a banner for Gila and like my weird OSR stuff that's going on. And just be like, here's Nova and a bunch of Nova stuff. Here's Slayers and lots more Slayer stuff. And so that's something that I want to do as a designer, and that's how I want to shape my booth in the future. It means I'm going to bring fewer core games. So like I'm going to stop bringing loot to conventions. People, like a very small handful of people will buy loot. Let's look it up here. How many people? In total, 11 copies of loot was sold. That's not nothing, but it's not enough to like justify the real estate that it takes up in the booth, especially since next year I'll have a smaller booth. Come back to that in a second. So a lot of these things just simply don't need to be there. They don't sell enough to justify their space in the booth. So I can kind of just phase them out and lean into this like 4 families of games. And then next year's booth, like I just said, is going to be a 10 by 10. Why is it going to be a 10 by 10? Well, I'm hoping it's going to start as a 10 by 20 because the way that PAX works is that you can re-up every year at the same size as what you are currently at. And I did sign a new contract for the 10 by 20, so I'm hoping I'm in their system as a 10 by 20 booth so that I can get like auto approved as a 10 by 20 and keep that. If that doesn't happen and I'm still in as a 10 by 10, that's fine. But I would like to be a 10 by 20, not to repeat this booth, but to split it in half. My good friend Mike, who runs this booth with me, wants to have his own booth at PAX, and it can take years to get a booth approved at PAX. It can take a really long time. And so we can kind of skirt that process by me just getting a bigger booth and just splitting it with him. Lots of other big companies do this, like IPR does this with Gen Con. They get a huge space and then they just sort of sublet it out to Plus One and Possible Worlds, and Possum Creek does this as well with Breitbart. So it's pretty common practice. So if I can secure that 10 by 20, I'll keep it, and then I'll just split it with Mike, and then Mike doesn't have to worry about applying because we're bringing the same stuff anyways. We're driving in from Chicago together, so we might as well split the booth that way. So that's my plan for next year. So you certainly will see me next year at PAX. One other thing I would like to do at PAX and Gen Con is have people run games for me at the cons. Because I can't do it. I'm not good at playing games with total strangers, so I can't do like an event like that. But I know there's people who are very good at that, so I will hire somebody / give them an exhibitor badge for that. The last thing is just specific numbers, just because some folks are interested in this stuff. So just keep in mind that these are specific financial numbers for Gila RPGs at PAX. I like sharing this stuff. I think it's important to share this sort of data. So Dragon Slayers and Rune were the most popular games. Dragon Slayer sold 54 copies. Rune sold 49 copies. So very similar numbers. But while those are similar, there's a $400 difference between them based off of price differences and then some wholesale stuff that was going on and bundling. So while they sold somewhat similar numbers, there's a numerical difference in terms of the money they bring in based off of bundling and price differences in them and stuff like that. And then it's a pretty big drop off in terms of money in from games. Like the next game down is Reap after Rune, and it made half as much money as Rune. So it's so clear that Rune continues to be like the game, and Dragon Slayers just was popular because it was the new hotness. That, like, again, going back to next year and supplements and stuff, like I need to make some freaking Rune stuff and need to like stop ignoring that. The other thing, the total number of money that was made at the booth, just so people know, was about $6,700. That's how much we sold. And we just sell books. So we don't sell dice or stickers or cards or anything like that. So it's just books that we're selling in our booth. I do know that that stuff can help. So that might be something that I start to do more, is bringing in little merch things and stuff like that, as long as it's a low lift on my end. But I'm pretty dang happy with what I brought in at PAX. Factoring in last year's amount, it was about 800 to 900 more dollars than last year. So seeing an increase from last year is great. Love to see that. Even if I stayed consistent from last year, that would have been great. So uh, pretty happy with those numbers. In total, it was 188 orders. But an order can be anything from one book to 10 books, depending on how many people buy. And factored into all these numbers is one wholesale purchase as well, that was amounting to like $230 or something like that. No, $270 from SideQuest Games. Um, and yeah, so those are my numbers. Those are my specific numbers. If you are considering boothing and stuff like that, I'm not saying that's how much you're going to make, but that's how much I made with the booth that I have, with the product that I have, and how long I've been doing this. So just think that helps people out. So that's it. That's my PAX Unplugged 2025 recap. It was awesome. It's always fantastic. I think I saw almost everybody that I wanted to see. There's like a couple folks that I just didn't cross paths with, and that's just because I was at the booth the whole time. So I really hope in the future that I can like get some shifts away from the booth. That's a hard thing for me to do. I really want to be at the booth a lot, but I also want like time with friends. So hopefully, future Spencer will remember that and get himself out on the floor talking with people instead of being behind the booth the whole time. If I saw you there, thank you so much for stopping by, either to say hi or to buy things. It means a whole lot to me. And yeah, so that's it. That's my recap. Thanks for hanging out. Now that I'm back, we're about to go into the holidays, so I don't know if I anticipate any design streams, but hopefully I'll do some of that again soon. All right, bye.